I briefly talked about this in my last video, but I felt like it needed its own separate video dedicated to this problem I've been having, going on for about a year and a half at this point. Now, we all know that Baldur's Gate 3 is praised as one of the standout examples of why prioritizing quality and care over trend chasing or crunching deadlines and crunching numbers for games or any number of negative effects that have impacted games nowadays is one of the reasons it's often referred to as a once in a generation type of game. And I find that people like to throw that term around a lot and say just about anything is a once in a generation or once in a lifetime type of game. But for me, it actually is that deep when it comes to Baldur's Gate 3. I've never played anything on the level of detail as Baldur's Gate 3. I've never played anything as interesting or engaging as Baldur's Gate 3. I mean this when I say it. I don't think I've ever been as happy in my entire life as when I first played my first playthrough of Baldur's Gate 3. If there was one thing I could erase from my memory and experience for the first time, it would be this game every single time. And so much so that I find myself trying to play the game in every single way possible to squeeze out every dialogue option and every cutscene and just different way to approach the game that I haven't already. I have maybe 2 playthroughs with every single race in the game, both custom characters as well as the Dark Urge character. The only companion stories that I have not yet gone through is Astarion and Karlach. And even with all of that, after 1100 hours, I still do not get bored of this game. It's incredible. It's incredible because I used to think more than 2 playthroughs was a lot. The first game I surpassed that amount of playthroughs was on Mass Effect 2, which is probably like my 3rd favorite game of all time. And even that doesn't hold a candle to Baldur's Gate 3. And I want to talk about why that is because it has without a doubt ruined my experience playing anything else since then. And I don't mean in a way like, oh, I can't play this game anymore, or this game that was about to come out looked promising and I would lack the appeal it once had. No, it's much more than that, and it's honestly worrying for me. I mean, like, I literally do not and have not found any enjoyment from almost any game I've played since then. I mean, besides like the 2 or 3, like Warframe at the start, I really enjoyed Warframe at the start, or Cyberpunk and Cyberpunk Phantom Liberty. I mean, it's my channel picture, so I'd hope so. But other than that, really, I don't know, maybe 25 games I've played since then, both old and new, felt so inferior, it wasn't even funny. But anyways, I've marked down 3 main things here on my little notepad to talk about why I think this game is slowly but surely ruining my favorite hobby, that is gaming. I could have marked down around like maybe 50, who knows? I mean, just give or take. I can mark down the smallest things I love about this game because there's just so many things. But I marked it down to 10, I think, and then to 6. And then I was like, let me make it 3 main points that can just sort of sum up, I guess, a good majority about what I really, really love about this game. But I would start rambling in circles if I just brought up everything. So I'll just try to keep it to these 3 topics without steering or going off course too much. Okay, so the first thing that makes Baldur's Gate 3 just a 1-on-1 game for me, something that will never be touched, is that this game is like a simulation. When I say simulation, I mean you can choose as many different paths or approaches to, well, anything as much as you want. It's the first game that truly says yes to anything that the player wants to do. Want to travel solo as a Dark Urge and suffer alone in your camp? Except for that one time. But the game will let you do that. You want to travel with just 1 or 2 or 3 companions? Do you want to betray all of those companions at multiple points in the story? Or just randomly through having enough disapproval? Hey, how about this? You want to date or partner with someone with enough negative approval and get special dialogue? Speaking of special dialogue, do you want 10 different or special ways to interact with almost every single NPC or companion in the game? At least up until Act 3, since it's mostly just random civilians there. But you can do all of that. And guess what? That's not even a tenth of what this game allows you to do in terms of player freedom and agency. I actually have no idea how this game even exists. Being someone who's played it for as long as I have, and still finding new ways to play or progress through certain missions or with certain dialogue checks, it really just leaves me mind blown. I think a good deal of this adaptability is due to Larian's own ability to listen to their community and really have an understanding of what people wanted from this game. Act 1 was in early access for a while, and it gave them more than enough time to listen to feedback and add or remove certain features or roadblocks to help improve Act 1 specifically. The approach to every encounter could take like a dozen different paths, it feels like. I do think that Acts 1 and 2 are more flexible, let's say, with player choice than Act 3 is. There are a couple of points in Act 3 where no matter what options or preparations you take in the previous two acts, a few choices or consequences are destined to happen no matter what. And I'm not sure why that is. Still, the entire game from start to finish basically lets you play the game any infinite number of ways you want to. To this day, I have yet to see a game that has come even remotely to this in terms of like a pure RPG experience or like a simulation kind of experience. Now, the second big reason I have is the addition of mod support for consoles in BG3. And I can already hear the PC players going, woohoo, PC Master Race. You know, we have mods whenever and wherever. Listen, I get all that. I am and always will be, well, maybe not always, but for now, I am strictly console only. And I feel like Baldur's Gate 3 is the new Skyrim with the sheer variety and amount of mods. Mods in Baldur's Gate 3 have added an infinite number of playthroughs for me personally. There are so many new classes and spells and quality of life updates through the mods. The most pressing of them is being able to adjust the party limit. That mod single-handedly has been the best mod in creation. It just has to be, because now I can have 13 extra party slots, which is more than enough to have every camp companion, plus like a hireling or two, I think. It just makes it so much easier to go to a place and have the right character in my party all the time, rather than having to constantly go back and forth to camp to switch out companions. Unfortunately, this makes the game kind of like kids mode easy if you level them all up, even with the difficulty mods and increasing opponent strength kind of mods that you can find. I think there's like a super difficulty mod. It's like a tactician kind of mod. You can like adjust the HP and the damage that the like NPCs will do. Even if you crank that shit, you'll have no issues, especially if you have some of the really cool spells that they've added with the mods as well, like I do. For me, I just manually level my characters according to the challenge that I receive. I like to sit somewhere between tactician and auto mode difficulty. So if my party keeps getting steamrolled, I level up characters one by one per level. So I keep in line with that difficulty and like adjust the mods. But aside from that, there's just some really cool stuff in the mod selection. And I wish that the consoles could handle all of them being installed. But you can only have about 100 installed before, you know, the game just doesn't function at that point. And yeah, man, I don't know. I wish that other developers and other games would add mod support to their games, because it increases the longevity of games by like at least times 10. Is it a pain in the ass to get mods up and running on consoles? Yeah, it absolutely is. Or more games probably would have done it. It's also likely the cost of adding mods outweighs the good reception that most devs will get out of it, because there's not really any monetary support from doing that. I know that Bethesda has a creation club thing where they can charge for mods, but I would say most games, if they add a mod system, is most likely going to be unmonetized, or at least not monetized in the way of like DLC and extra microtransactions. So I do get it, but again, this is just another stepping stone that sets Baldur's Gate 3 apart from the masses of other games. They said, screw it, we'll just add mod support officially for everyone, and it couldn't have been a better decision, at least for me. It's why Baldur's Gate 3 wins like in almost every category: multiplayer, you know, story-driven narrative, all like every like co-op, everything, is because they support every avenue of the game, including mods, and it's just what makes it really sets it apart from even great games. And the last thing, at least for this video, that has made it almost impossible for me to enjoy games other than Baldur's Gate 3 is the extremely grounded and realistic characters set in this world. Hear me out on this one, because this is going to sound like a cop-out point, but it's actually not. In every game that I've ever played, no matter if it's extremely well written, like say Red Dead Redemption 2, or an extremely emotional and also well written game like The Last of Us, or a lore heavy game like The Witcher 3, which I've read the books to like at least 4 or 5 times, no video game has had more grounded or realistic and reactive characters than this game has by a country mile. It's not even close. Let's forget that the characters react differently depending on your actions. I mean every single character, every companion, and every NPC in the game, by the way, except for Act 3, because there's, you know, random civilians. But let's put all that aside for a second. I have never been so amazed by how real characters feel in a video game other than this game. Like how real they talk, how real they act, all the animations and facial animations. If I had to compare it to something, I'd say, when a fantasy author such as, let's say, Brandon Sanderson, for example, you know how they have one overarching story set in a universe of a lot of compelling stories and characters, and it can get segmented into like many different stories and, just a whole different set of characters, like the 10 different side stories and worlds that happen in Brandon Sanderson's Cosmere universe. It's kind of like that. There are so many interesting characters and side stories I feel like could have worked and been DLCs or future expansions and would have worked just as well as the main story. Because everyone in every backstory is just so interesting that exploring those stories could have been on par with the main cast of characters. Now, that's never going to happen, obviously, as you likely already know if you're watching this video, that Larian has already said that they're basically finished with Baldur's Gate 3 in terms of any expansion or anything like that. But I personally feel like that this game's open world and everyone in it are so much more realistic and fleshed out, and they just feel real more than any other game that I've ever played. And as I said before, characters are the number one most important thing in any story-driven narrative. So put 2 and 2 together, and this is also probably one of my favorite story experiences in any video game that I've ever played as well. Listen, I understand that Baldur's Gate 3 isn't for everyone. In fact, I can get a lot of the issues that people take up with it. I myself have a few issues with it. For instance, I absolutely dread the Underdark every playthrough. It just feels like so detached from the main story, and is so inconsequential with every aspect and everything that you do there, that my only reason to do it is that my completionist playstyle makes me do it. Or as I already mentioned, the issues with the determined outcomes in Act 3, despite its massive size, it feels like it's about half the game, but yet it feels very much like the majority of the decisions you make come in Acts 1 and 2. But all of that is a drop in the bucket in the sea of the fun that I have while I'm playing Baldur's Gate 3. And almost no game since has had any positive effect on me as a result. Now, the games I'm looking forward to break me out of this mode, The Witcher 4, Larian's next game, and that's probably it. People were like, hey, try KCD 2. Bored. I didn't like Kingdom Come Deliverance 1, the most boring combat of all time. I don't care what people say. Hey, try Assassin's Creed Shadows. Bored. I'll play Black Flag when it comes out, the Black Flag remake, but that's about it. Hey man, try this. Hey man, try that. All of it, bored as hell compared to Baldur's Gate 3. It's like not even close. I mean, it's just how I feel. Like I can't help that. I really did wish I could enjoy different games now, because it's pushed me into this mold where it's either Baldur's Gate 3 or bust. And I'm not gonna lie, some days I don't feel like playing Baldur's Gate 3 because I just want something else. I eventually will always come back to it, but I mean, nothing else just does it for me, man. I never really get completely bored of it, and it's like that addiction almost. It's just, there's nothing else like it. But that's just how it goes sometimes. You can look for the peak of gaming, and you're constantly on the search for it. And once you've actually found it, like you found the actual peak for you of gaming, everything else just starts to blend together, and you just have to hope that you can find little, I guess, diversions of fun, something that sort of breaks you out of that mold. Because for me, after about a year and a half of just playing straight Baldur's Gate 3 with game here or there, nothing has even come close to the enjoyment I've had for this game, and it's kind of ruining my gaming experience, if I'm being honest. I'm not a gamer anymore. I'm a Baldur's Gate 3 player.